and welcome back to another episode of Ignite Your Power at the Kathy Mou Podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest whose journey is a true testament to resilience, purpose, and the power of saying yes to life's opportunities. Lori Pappas is an entrepreneur, humanitarian, and author of The Magic Yes, which is right here. I love this book so much. We will talk about it obviously later on, but she's dedicated her life to helping curious, ambitious women cultivate inner peace, happiness, and self-discovery. Lori's story is one of transformation, from pioneering the use of computers in corporate operations to selling her business at 49 and failing at retirement, only to start a nonprofit that continues to change lives. She knows firsthand that success isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about embracing them. Today, she's here to share her wisdom on overcoming adversity, stepping into your purpose, and allowing yourself to say yes to life's possibilities. So I can't wait for you guys all to hear her inspiring insights. So let's dive in and say hi to Lori. Hi, Lori.
How is everybody out there today? I
Yeah.
hope you're doing great.
Thank you. I'm so honored to have you here, honestly, and for you to give me this incredible book.
Oh my goodness, Kathy, you hold that book up and all of a sudden I can see my shirt matches my book cover. Isn't that a hoot? This was not on purpose, guys. Absolutely not on purpose, but oh my God,
Oh my gosh, that's so synchronistic, isn't that?
it is.
And I was just talking about how purple is so beautiful in the flowers on your shirt. And then,
Right.
yeah, you're right. It's like literally purple in the flowers. I love this synchronistic, like signs already off the bat. Like you are so meant to be here. You're here because you're supposed to share your story with my listeners and with me and your journey. It's incredible.
Absolutely, it's got to be. I mean, otherwise, why the heck would you wear a shirt that matches your cover?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about your journey.
Okay,
And yeah, so your journey has been one of saying yes to life's challenges. Can you take us back to a pivotal moment when you first embraced this mindset?
well, I would say that I first embraced the mindset when I was 17 years old because I didn't have any other choice.
Mhm.
I had, it's a bit of a backstory, but my mother was a religious fanatic. My father did not like to have any kind of disruption in the house. He was a Greek immigrant that really defied tradition to marry my mother, and he could not admit that there was anything wrong with her. So therefore, there had to be something wrong with me. And they had committed me to a mental hospital, which really is a scary place back in those days. I'm 75 years old right now. So you're talking about a mental hospital about the time when I don't know if any of you guys would have seen the Jack Nicholson movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but it's that type of genre in that it was a scary place, a real scary place. And once I realized that the drugs they were giving me was destroying my photographic memory, I set out to getting out of there quickly. And so I think that was my very first big yes. And it was a really big yes to me that I knew that I had to do something in order to save myself and my wits about me. And so I'd say, yeah, my first big yes, I was 16 going on 17.
Wow, thank you for sharing that like inspiring story. And it's literally like parts of the first chapter. I read it and I was like, this is so captivating. Like I need to read more. But anywho, yeah, so your story about saying yes to yourself though is just the beginning piece of how your life started to like show up for you. And that's hard to deal with back in the day. Like you had to get admitted to a psychiatric hospital and your mom put you there, or your dad did actually, right? Um,
Right, right.
so
Because it was too embarrassing to put my mom in. But
yeah,
evidently it wasn't embarrassing to put your 16-year-old kid in.
yeah.
So anyway, go figure.
And you're so intelligent and bright that you were able to take the drugs and pretend that you actually ate them, which made you more
Right.
delusional, which is so wild. And they literally drug you there, it sounded like. Because I,
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're literally, this was a time when people were getting lobotomies and shock treatment was really common. And there was a gal that, the stories in my book really are true. There's a gal literally that had just had a shock treatment and had overheard the doctors talking about that she was going to get a lobotomy. And she was just terrified. And I thought, holy shit, this is not going to happen to me. I'm going to do everything I can to get out of there fast. And I did. I
Mhm.
did. And when you're there's an old song and it all goes about when you have the threat of hanging in front of you, it focuses your mind. And I'll tell you what, that was really that feeling to me is that they're going to do something bad to me. I'm going to not let that happen. So I'll figure out the game.
Wow. And you followed that intuition gut feeling at just 16. And I love that because I feel like a lot of us nowadays are so far from feeling our gut. Like knowing, even though you feel it and you know you're like, this isn't right. And then you just like and still do it and go against that feeling. But you
Yeah,
like knew and was like, I'm getting out of here.
yeah. But you know, I think that I would imagine if it hadn't been such an extreme case, maybe I wouldn't have been so determined. But it was so black and white.
Yeah.
And I had a photographic memory when I went into that hospital, and I could feel that I was having a harder time reading anything or remembering anything. And that was something that I relied on. So it was dramatic enough that I grabbed the reins myself, and I didn't have anybody else to rely on. And so I did what needed to be done to get out. And I realized that whatever I was going to become, it was going to have to be up to me. Nobody else was going to do it for me. So I think once again, when you know that you're the only person you can count on, I think that clarifies things a little bit, don't you? And
Yeah.
it makes a bit of a difference.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like certain scenarios or certain things that happen in your life truly lead you into where you're supposed to be or like lessons that you're supposed to learn. So you truly ignited your power that day. Like you were taught a hard lesson of like, okay, no one's gonna teach me anything but myself. And I had one of those moments too, like in my college days in my 20s. Later, not 16, but like in my 20s where you just have like a ha like I have to do everything myself and no one's gonna like hand it to me or anything like that. And that helps you actually grow a, stronger mindset and like determination and confidence. Do you feel like that has helped with that too when you were
Mhm.
able to accomplish that?
Well, absolutely. And I think that's something for your listeners to really understand is the fact that it doesn't have to be as dramatic as what I went through,
Yeah.
but every little thing that we conquer, we can draw strength from that and use that to ignite our power. That really is go forward momentum, saying, hey, I did this, or I survived this situation, or I confronted this person. That makes that resilient muscle start working. And you have that to then leverage.
Yeah. And I love how you said it's a resilience muscle. It's true. You have to build that. Like it's all within us. It's either if you want to use it or not, or if you want to like, try doing something different and coming out of all the hardships and learning from them, right? Instead of like getting stuck in that victim mentality of like how the world is against you. And I feel like a lot of us, do get trapped in that mindset. I definitely did. But I don't know if that ever has happened to you where, you just get stuck in a situation, you're like, I'm never gonna get out of this. Oh no. Like, and then it's just like a vicious cycle of self-sabotage, fear, overwhelm, right? Or anxiety.
I think a lot of people get into that. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, you've got a choice. You can sit on the couch and be flabby. And that's kind of with that resilient muscle too. You could just sit there and be flabby and, oh my God, everything's going wrong for me. I'm so unlucky. Well, that's a bunch of baloney. You're
Yeah.
not so unlucky. You're living in a country where there's food, there's medical care, you've got access to internet, and you've got choices.
Yeah.
So it's up to you to build that muscle and to build on your successes and to learn from all your little mistakes. It's all there available.
And you know this because you've been to third world countries. You have a nonprofit organization
Right.
after retiring after 49 with having a successful business, which we will tap into later. But you know how like these little kids literally in these third world countries don't have any options. Like they don't know any better because their world is literally just like the bare minimum, right?
It is, but you know what? There are these star girls right in the middle of that as well. I mean, I've seen people that literally do not have anything. They're really they're hungry, they've got intestinal worms, they feel crappy all the time, and yet they're survivors.
Yeah.
And they have to really struggle in order to take advantage of some things that then people like me were able to offer. But they do it and they're so resilient. So I know I had a really difficult time when I was living over there, and I would come back to visit my family periodically, and
Yeah.
somebody might complain about some stupid little thing. And it was really hard for me not to just become judgmental
Yeah.
and criticize. But that was their reality,
Mhm.
and I had lived in this other reality.
Yeah.
So we have so much advantage that we have available to tap into.
Yeah, we really do. Truly are abundant. Like if you're in America right now, even though it's so crazy chaotic, but
Right,
we're still so abundant with all the good things. Like I feel like the media, etc., always focuses on the negative. So everybody is always like focus on the negative, but you don't have to, right? Like
right,
you get to choose what you focus your energy on and
right.
what you truly want. And I know that you've been doing that. So what actually inspired you to start a nonprofit organization?
Well, like you said, I had a for-profit business. I sold it when I was 49, and I really tried to retire. I mean, I even tried to play golf, which really is not something I would recommend for people like me, where the ball is so tiny and the stick is so skinny. And anyway, and I did a lot of volunteer work. And the one thing I learned when I was in this failing process is I'm a real crappy follower. I don't do that well either. I've been a boss all my life, and so I've been able to control most variables. And I found that sitting in meetings and being a follower just really wasn't my long suit. But I had a chance to travel, and I traveled all over the world, all over the world. And one day I was in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and a little girl came up to me who was about my granddaughter's age, and she had flies on her eyes. And I realized that could have been my little Ella. And my little Ella did nothing special to be born my granddaughter. And this little gal had done nothing wrong to be born in a disease-ridden life. It was the cards she was dealt.
Yeah.
And so, how do we make the best of those cards? And that really became a challenge to me. And I'm very challenge motivated. So it was like, okay, what can be done to get the flies off of these little kids' eyes and to give them a chance to a healthy life? And so I think I was about 56, 57. And I thought, well, I had started a for-profit business when I was a single mom with two little girls, and it was successful, and I learned a lot of lessons. So this should not be a big deal for me to start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And it was pretty arrogant because it's a big deal. It was really hard. Um,
Yeah.
I, but I'm very focused. So I really was focused on what is it that these people need to have a healthy life. And of course, I chose the most difficult area of the world with one of the most marginalized tribes of the world, because that's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
And, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me.
Oh, that's so amazing, ambitious, and like such a beautiful thing for you to do and wanting to do. You're like defying all the odds to help these people out of the goodness of your heart because you saw a situation and you're like, I want to make this better. And then you're doing it, at a very like at a very hard area of whatever you're doing, and it's like that. I think that's one of your maybe life purposes to do. Yes, you learned all these skills from actually your for-profit business and then you used it into your nonprofit, which is cool.
Right. Yeah. And the way I looked at it, it never was, oh my, look at me do this. It was like, well, why wouldn't I do it? Of course I would do it. I was given these gifts as far as having some innate intelligence and being able to be persuasive and understand what issues are and so on and so forth. And I knew how to network. Um, so it would have been a waste for me not to do it.
How did you actually be able to communicate with them and to, help them understand like, hey, I'm here to help you and I really want to like make your lives better. So how did that process look like?
Well, I started out by identifying what their biggest issue was, and it was diarrhea.
Mm,
They all have diarrhea because they've got intestinal worms. And those worms keep cycling through the system because they deal with open field defecation and not good hygiene behavior. So I started out dealing with crap, it was
that's hard.
literally, literally. And though I usually use a different word. And so there's a pill, mebendazole, that you can get over the counter that stops diarrhea. It really is effective. And the government's supposed to be handing it out, but that's another whole issue. But anyway, I would buy a big duffel bag full of that. And when I first started going down into this area, I would carry that bag of pills and I would hand it out. And all of a sudden, people were feeling better. And then I loved the little kids, and I cared about the people. So even though we were going through multiple translators, and some of them were lying when they translated, which is another story. But anyway, the people could tell that I really cared.
Mhm.
They could just see that I really, really cared about them. So we created a bond, and the we're fortunate we saved a couple elders' lives just by being human and
Yeah.
paying attention. And I remember one of the main guys' little baby had rolled into the fire because they live in these little huts and there's a actual fire that's on all the time to boil their coffee shaft, which is another story because they don't even get regular coffee. They just get the cast off shells. And this little baby had rolled into the fire.
Oh my gosh.
And I had I had learned I became quite expert at how to deal with tragedy without any tools, with making a salve or being able to pull out infection or those kinds of things. And we were actually able to save that little baby. And when I saw the baby, even 6 months, a year later, you would never know that it had been so burned. So, those kinds of things, when you're actually doing things that make people feel better and they can see you doing it. And of course, I think it helped me in that at that time I was in my late 50s and I've had white hair for ages. So I look old and I'm kind of creaky. So I walk creaky like at times. And I'm
First
just
of all,
so
yeah, you don't
old
look
lady
old.
doing
You look
stuff.
fabulous. You look fabulous.
So that's because I match my book, right?
No, no, your energy and just like,
Yeah,
just everything about you and how you were talking about how they can feel it. And that's
they
the
do.
part that I love and always try to mention is like, we are energy. So people can truly feel if you're being honestly there for the good or the bad. Like you have to
Right,
tap again into your intuition and that gut feeling of like, oh, this doesn't feel right or this feels right, right? And like
right.
right when I first met you, our first coffee chat, I was like, oh my gosh, your energy. I just love it so much. You're just
Yeah.
a vibrant, loving person. And then I didn't even know your story then, really, truly. But all of the things that you've done with this nonprofit and then like, your for-profit too, it's just so crazy that you've been through so much and yet you're still so open and kind and just wanting to help. So like it's like your soul being within you is just like this light. So you're like,
Thank
no. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's amazing. So how long were you there for the nonprofit?
Um, I was there, I started working there in 2007
Oh,
and I needed to leave in 2016 because it had gotten too dangerous for me to be there. And
really?
um, so one day I packed a roller bag and took my favorite wall hanging off the wall and put it in my suitcase and got on the plane. And so I never really got to say goodbye to all my friends there. So hopefully now in November this year, my granddaughter and I are going to go back and I'll be able to do that.
Oh my gosh, how
Yeah.
exciting. Did you ever take your daughters there with you?
One of my daughters came over and visited me.
Oh.
And yeah, and her probably most lasting memory was we had a professor over there with us because I was doing some things with some college students, um, and this professor tried to sell my daughter to an elder for 40 cows and goats. So that's kind of her memory of.
Aw. And then now you get to take your granddaughter, which is
Right, right. Yeah, so that's very exciting.
oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I wonder how it is now from like when you first started and then now to like, the changes that you've helped implement. I wonder, but that would be pretty cool to see, you know?
Be very, very interesting. I would guess, I mean, we did like 130 some wells or water schemes, and I would guess that they're not all working at all because that typically is what happens. I would guess that from what I understand, the schools that we started, some are still operating. We have an orphanage, and our first orphan now just was accepted into college, and so that's very, very exciting.
How exciting.
And and one of the things that I'm really anxious to see is there's a tree that grows over there called moringa. And
Mm,
moringa is like this magical tree. It grows very fast and you can eat everything of that tree. And we planted like 122,000 of those. And so that it not only became a food source, but that it became a income generating product. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that that's going well.
that's amazing. I have heard of moringa though. I have
Yeah,
heard
it's
of it.
great.
Like
Yeah,
I heard that it's like a magic, like, yeah,
wonderful.
like there's a lot of health benefits to it.
There is absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. 122
Well,
trees.
I'm kind of an overachiever.
I love it. I know. So how did that work with your overachieving in your for-profit? So let's kind of back up into
Yeah.
that because I know you actually had to work with a lot of males and you were like one of the women working in, that type of setting. I'm sure it was like a lot of hardships that you had to overcome because during your time, like even though now, right, we have a lot of women like rights issues and imagine like, I don't know, what, 30, 40 years ago would be even like worse.
Well, let's see. I started in that business when I started in sales when I was in my 20s, and I was selling computers, and I was one of the first women in the world that sold computers.
Wow.
And that actually worked to my benefit in that even though the sales secretary would refuse to type my proposals or do anything like that, because after all, I was a woman and I should do my own stuff, she got an attitude adjustment fairly quickly, however. Um, I was able to get sales calls easier than the guys because people wanted to see what this broad looked like. I
Yeah.
mean, who was this? And at this time, I would have been in my 20s,
Wow.
um, and I'm 75 now. So my God, that's 50 years ago.
Wow.
Ago. And
Wow.
there were some guys that literally would tell me that I would get the order if I would go to bed with him. And I would tell them, well, you bend over and roll up that sales order and shove it up, you know where, I mean. So I became really good at walking the line so that I could get the appointment and then I would know what I was talking about. And they wanted to make money, and I convinced them if they did what I said, they'd make more money. So there we go.
That's amazing. How'd you get that courage to just do it? Or you just knew it within you? You're just like, I got this. I'm just gonna do it and defy like, everything like whatever society's saying or doing, you're just gonna go and do it and get that courage. Because a lot of
Kathy,
us don't have it, right? We
uh,
don't have it in us.
I don't know that I ever really saw gender. I
Mm,
mean, I obviously I knew men from women and all that stuff, but I mean, when it came to dealing with people, what I saw was either competence or idiocracy.
mm,
I mean, and I had this I had this shell, I think, and this probably was one of the benefits I had from having a crazy mother and then being in that mental hospital is that to survive, I had a protected shell that I built around me. So even when these arrows would be tossed my way, they would just bounce off because I'd feel like, well, who the hell do you think you are?
yeah.
You know, get a life. And and so that abusive childhood actually helped me disassociate, and that disassociation really kind of helped me as I navigated that very, very male dominated world. And the men loved it because I wasn't in awe of them, and then so they could tap into what I knew, and I knew my stuff. So competence usually wins.
Yeah.
It does. If you know what you're talking about, you generally can figure out how you can utilize that in a way that's helpful.
Yes. That makes so much sense. It really does. Because I've been struggling with confidence here and there in my own business or whatever I'm doing in my, you know, life right now. And so I didn't have the same opportunities or things that happened at a young age. So my confidence is building at the age of like 30 versus earlier in life. So it's like trying to overcome the self-sabotage, the fears, or, that perfectionism or whatnot,
Right.
right? That we all have to overcome at one point in our time if you want to achieve whatever your goal is.
You really do. You really do. And the secret I found as far as dealing with being a perfectionist, which which I am, I try not to be anymore, but 75, it's kind of hard to learn new tricks on that, is become really good at changing how high the bar is set. Just lower the bar, and then you can still be perfect. Just move that bar around, and it doesn't have to stay up real high. It can come down. It's okay.
That's true. Oh, I love that
Yeah.
tip. That's so funny that you say that because my sister was saying that too. Like, why don't you just focus on the like what you can do now, like, and just be confident and happy that that happened. And I was like, that's true. Why am I looking so far, like setting the bar so high? Of course, it's like you're gonna be disappointed, you're gonna feel less confident. Like, that is such a great advice. I love that so much.
Yeah, though it's hard to take my own advice. I'm I'm used to excelling, and I've never written a book before. I've never tried to sell a book, or here I actually am putting myself out as being somebody that's wise and that has things to help other people. And so that's really all about my being, not my doing.
Mm.
And I've gotten the awards usually from my doing.
Yeah.
And um and so I'll sit there and I'll think, oh well, what if it doesn't do well? Well, as long as I get my message out, that's really what I want. I want to get my message out. Well, but what if it really doesn't sell very well? Or
Yeah.
what if you don't this or do that? Or
Yeah.
this whole world of social media is something that's very bizarre to me. And but at the end of the day, I'll just shift my bar around because darn it all, I mean, I'll excel, and maybe that bar is going to be in a whole different place, but somehow I'll get over it.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you switch it around all the time, but then see, you have to change the narrative of like,
You
okay,
do.
you started thinking negative thoughts, but then you're like, no, what if it
Right.
does this? And, think of the positives. And that's something that we have to train our mind to do. We have
We
to,
really do.
yeah.
You know, it really is mind over matter.
Mm,
I mean, you have the ability to focus your mind, you have the ability for self-talk. So let's just work on having that self-talk be motivating and resilient and positive. And whenever that negative stuff goes in, just trump it away
yeah.
on that bad boy.
Yeah. That's so true. I love that. Chop it away. It's
Yeah,
true. We should.
right.
But, we're not, a lot of us are not taught that.
We're not taught that, but we can teach ourselves.
Hmm.
We have the power to teach ourselves. We have an innate ability to make a choice. So
Yeah,
it's our choice if we want to become the architect of our life. That's our choice. No
true.
matter what our circumstances are,
True.
it's our choice.
Yes, I
Yeah,
love that word too. It's how we get to choose, right? Our choice is how you want to show up every day. Do you want to be negative or positive? Just like before, like when, we were catching up right before recording, and you're like, "Yeah, I woke up in a very like not so good mood," but then you chose to do activities that made you feel better, and then
right.
you were able to feel better and then show up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing how these little choices that you choose every day are huge, pillars in like shifting your reality or shifting your mindset or like, doing the things that actually get you closer to your desires. And a lot of us
Right.
are stuck with that.
Well, and I think one of the messages I'd really like to share is
Yeah.
become really good at making little mistakes quickly. The key is make them fast, meaning fall down, pick yourself right back up again. Just get your cycle time on making little mistakes quick. Because what that does is that builds that resilience muscle. It's just like a bodybuilder adding another weight. It helps you really learn how to bounce back, move on, take the next thing. And also what it does is it'll keep you from making big mistakes.
Mm.
It really does. And if you think you made a big mistake, just redefine it as something smaller and move on. I mean, you've got that ability to keep shifting what's in front of you.
Yeah.
We can turn, we can move, we can shift our focus.
Yeah, it's
Have
true.
that right.
Yeah, but it's that muscle. It's training that muscle, right? That's
Yes,
why the mental aspect is so important. Our brain muscle is so important. It should be as important as, our society talks about physical, like, muscles on your arms or your legs or whatever it may be that. Like, no,
right,
your brain muscle, like certain muscles in your brain should be worked on a daily basis, right?
right.
Like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And you
so,
can make new connections in your brain. Those are little synapses. And that's all you train yourself. That's why that whole idea of if there's a habit that you really want to become good at, practice it 10,000 times. It's all that, just keep working it, keep working it, keep doing it. And it makes a big difference.
yeah, it does. So for your book though, The Magic of Yes, how did you come up with this concept of writing this particular book? Like what inspired you to write, a topic for women to embrace the wise woman within?
So right about the time so about 2007,
Hmm.
when I had decided I was going to work in Africa, and the magic of yes just came to me. And I thought of it as stepping beyond fear, embracing the new. So that was the title and the subtitle that was always in my mind. And when I was over in Ethiopia living by myself, even though I had a bunch of employees, I'd spend my evenings by myself. And usually it was in the dark because electricity would go off. And so I would just sit there and think. And I, there were so many things I wanted to share, but somehow I needed to have credibility. I needed to have credibility in order to share or for people to listen. And I never graduated from college. I um, I started businesses, I was successful, all of that, but I didn't have the traditional degrees and letters behind my name. And I I decided, so what? Big deal.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of move on from that. And and but I knew I needed to tell my story. And fortunately, I had a one thing after another. I knew that I did not know how to organize a book that wasn't boring. Because to me, the idea of just starting, well, first I was born, and then I did this, and then I
Yeah.
did that, and then I did that. I mean, God, that's really boring. Who wants to read that crap? But and also really what I wanted to do was I wanted I wanted people to be able to take advantage of what I had learned.
Yeah.
I really wanted them to take advantage of that. And so in working with my editor, we just decided, well, why don't we work on saying yes to winning with the cards that you were dealt, or say yes to learning how to forgive yourself and others, or say yes to taking risks and exploring opportunities. And then we were able to just parse up my story to put it into those sections. And then also I was able to gather in stories of other extraordinary, ordinary women that exemplified that message. And then after it was all written, I kept thinking, but so what? What is somebody going to do, or how is somebody going to really take actionable steps? So one day, walking my dog, thank goodness for walking my dog, it all became clear. And I decided I would do a dream framework where we would use that acronym of DREAM. And D would be desire, R would be reflect, E would be explore, A would be acknowledge, and M would be a mantra. And that then would create doable, actionable items for hopefully those curious, ambitious women that wanted to experience greater peace and harmony to help them explore these different pathways. Because by then it had become apparent that each of these things that we're talking about saying yes to are different pathways.
Mm.
You can take the path, explore the pathway of winning with the cards you were dealt. You can take the pathway of challenging the status quo, or helping others help themselves, or reading your physiological garden, meaning make sure that you're in alignment, that you get your life in alignment with what you want to be. Meaning that whole positive energy thing is that we want to make sure that we're in a spot where we're able to allow the goodness that's available to us to come in. That we get rid of those roadblocks and that emotional baggage that we carry, or those hurdles that we put up.
Yeah.
So it all ended up coming together magically. I mean, I love my book. I usually always kind of poo-poo whatever I do, but I say this book, it's damn good. It's
Yeah.
really good. I'm really proud of it.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm proud of you for putting it out there, for putting your message, and you truly believed it. You're like, dude, I have a message to put out there, and you're just gonna do it. And
Yeah.
you didn't allow like your fear or the ego mind to say something like, no, you can't do it, or don't do it. And you're just like, no, I really have that feeling of I'm gonna do it, and yeah, it's so good. I already read the beginning pages and I'm like and already captivated, so I know you put a lot of heart into it and thought, and so I love it, and it's so beautiful. It it matches your
That's my
outfit.
shirt.
Yeah, I still can't get over that, but it's so beautiful. And what would you tell somebody though if they are stuck about something? Like, having that, "Oh, I don't know if I should do it, or I don't know if I can, but just overcoming that fear and just, going for it, right?"
Yeah. Well, I think that if you feel like I think it depends upon how much of a grip that fear has on you, is
Mm.
what I would suggest for someone to do. If you're absolutely paralyzed by that fear, and I'm talking about somebody maybe getting out of an abusive relationship or an abusive thing or something that's physically dangerous, then concentrate on what you could do to make it less dangerous. So that you don't just go barging out the door, but you think about, okay, so what can I do to make myself feel a little safer, or what safeguards could I put out before I take that first step? If somebody is afraid of asking for a raise that they think that they really deserve at work, that's a little different situation. That's something where you can really gather the data and you can present a case. And people generally respond. People respond if there's something in it for them. I
Mm.
mean, just face it. It all comes down to figure out what's in it for the person that you're trying to persuade,
Mm.
and then see how they can get um, what they need while you still protect yourself. So that's probably one of my favorite topics in my book. It's understanding the power of WIFM, and WIFM is what's in it for me, and the me being that other person. So you really work on trying to put yourself in that other person's shoes and figure out what it is that they need, so that you can then get what you need. um, and I would also say, try to set your expectations that you're probably going to fail. And so if that approach fails, then what's the next approach? Set yourself up so that you're ultimately going to win by being realistic. You're not going to be an expert fear fighter if you've never fought fear before. I mean, it takes a while to get to be a good fear fighter, right?
Yeah.
So, like anything like that, it's just, it's goes back to that muscle. It goes back to building small competencies that you can build on to become larger competencies.
Mm.
So it's it's just like everything else. It all takes practice, damn it all. It's not something you can just snap your fingers and be great at the first time out.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Thank you for taking the time to really answer that. It does. It does take a lot of time and just setting the expectations lower of like, okay, I am gonna fail. And if you're doing something new out of the norm, of course it's gonna feel unfamiliar. It's gonna be scary. It's gonna, be hard at first, but then it's gonna get
Right,
easier and easier as you do it. Yeah.
right.
I'm trying to practice this still, but it's easier said than done, like what you say. Like practicing. You preach it, but then it's harder to practice it.
Hey, you know what, Kathy? I'm still practicing. In fact, last night, the reason I woke up in a crappy mood this morning is that one of the things that I have the hardest time doing is accepting the things I cannot change.
Mm,
You know, when
yeah.
something is really stupid or doesn't make sense, or somebody's trying to get me to do something that's not logical,
Hmm.
it really irritates me. And it's really hard to be gracious about something that you really don't have any control over. You don't get to choose. Like I said, I'm used to being the boss, and there's just a whole hell of a lot of things I can't be the boss of.
Yeah.
So last night, as I'm laying awake most of the night, I keep saying to myself, I keep going over and over my mantra. I keep trying to beam loving kindness. I keep trying to convince myself, accept the things you can't change. So intellectually, I'm working it. I'm really working it. But even at this age and after all these years of practice, it's still practice. It still is a struggle sometimes.
Yeah, I get it. And it's so funny because I see a lot of like what you go through. I go through the same things. And I'm like, and I'm just laughing because I'm the same way. I'm like, how are you not understanding logically, right? And then it's like you can't fix it or make somebody else think that way because they will just never understand it. But then it is so
They won't.
frustrating because you get it. And you're
I
like,
know, but it's a variable we can't change.
yeah, yeah,
And we've got to be able to just move on.
yeah,
We,
yes.
we have to. We have to move on, make the best of it, and just deal with it. And I've been doing this a long time, and now I'm preaching it. So I've got to practice what I preach. I mean, I'm out there preaching it, and I'm still not doing it 100% of the time.
Yeah. But at least you're aware of like the thoughts, right? At least you're
Oh,
aware.
I'm really aware. I'm definitely aware that
Yeah,
I'm not.
some people are not even aware of that though, right? Like what really ticks them off or what annoys them, and then like having that rational answer to whatever you're feeling, those
Right,
emotions that you're going through.
right,
And I go through that a lot with my husband. I'm like, how do you not get it? Yeah.
right, exactly. You
And
know,
then,
I
And then
know.
I just have to accept it, like, okay, he just thinks differently than me. But at the end of the day, it's like, he has his own thought process and I can't force anything. So it's always
And
like,
he has the right to have his own.
yes, yes.
As stupid as it is, he's still got the right.
Yes, I have to say, I have to just allow it and just let him, be and just be like, okay, all right. But again, it's like dealing with your emotions. And I feel like the biggest thing that we can all do for ourselves every single day is to practice on loving ourselves, to understanding ourselves, to working on ourselves, right? Like you can't
Right,
control other people, just like what Mel Robbins' new book is, like let them theory, right? Is to just let them be, but that's exactly it. Like let them, because in our society we're so prone to what people are doing and like their lives and whatever, like so consumed by it, but we're so out of tune of our own bodies, of our own selves. And so, your book teaches that though, like to really embrace your own hardships and to just say yes to them and to overcome them and to build that resilience, which is so beautiful, you know?
Right. Yeah. And, quite frankly, those of us that had to overcome some fairly significant things, look at the advantage that we've got. I
Yeah.
mean, that really is a big advantage because you've done that and you're alive and you're surviving and you're probably thriving. And you've got that resilience. You've got that experience of having done that. And then the other thing that's wonderful is that you have the ability to tap into the empathy and compassion for others.
Mhm.
Because when you think back of having to overcome that or how you felt overcoming that, then hopefully that can translate into compassion for others. I know for a number of years, it kind of worked the opposite for me because it was like, well, hell, I did that, then why aren't you? I mean,
Yes.
that's kind of an easy way to sneer and think you can do it. Why couldn't everybody else do it? But over time, you come to realize that we all do have different traits and we all do have different ways of dealing with situations. And it's really not fair to project ourselves
Yeah,
on the behavior of someone else. That's really not fair.
right. Yeah. I believe that it is true. It isn't fair. And so it's about being compassionate, having that empathy, and just like being kind to know that, okay, their reality or their perception in life is different than yours. And so
Right.
they cannot see it in that way because they didn't have the same experiences. Like you've gone, able to travel the world. So I feel like people who are able to travel the world and are privileged to be able to do so are able to be more open-minded because you're able to see different cultures, you're just able to see more things than somebody who's just stayed in their hometown their whole life, right?
It is as long as they're traveling the world, they're just not staying at all the five-star hotels.
Oh. Okay, that's true too. That's another point. That
Because
is,
a lot of people do that, it's like, oh, I'm going to travel the world. And so they pick out the fancy hotels and go to the fancy restaurants, which is okay. But, I think you got to kind of get down and get dirty a little bit so you can really experience those other cultures.
yeah, like to actually immerse yourself in it, and at a young
Yeah.
age, I was privileged enough to have my parents send us to my twin and I to Taiwan for like a whole summer for like 2 months, just us, and we've learned so much, like
Oh,
immersing yourself
yeah.
in the whole, their country, their, speaking and everything, and it just opens your eyes to like how other people live, and it's
Right.
beautiful. So to be able to have those experiences. And I feel like a lot of us need to see those and experience those experiences, especially people in the US. We are so abundant here. So if you go to a third world country, you're going to be like, okay, what are we even arguing about here? Like, what is going on? Why are we so divided? You're going to see, okay, they have the bare minimum. You're going to love them and take care of them no matter what, no matter what. What race you are, whatever sex you are, it's like at that point, it's just about humanity and loving and
Right.
being empathetic. Like, but I feel like there's just so much abundance here. It's just like people can pick and choose what they want. But if you don't, if you're thrown to like a third world country with nothing, the bare minimum, you don't get to choose really.
Right.
You just get handed the cards that you get, like what you said.
Right. But one thing that we can really do without traveling is in this, I don't want to get political on this podcast, but there really are a number of people less fortunate than we here in the US. And we have the opportunity to get to know a bit about them
Yeah,
if we just see them as people.
yeah,
And if we engage with them as individuals and as people, and that they are a wonderful resource that are just right here in our neighborhood if we're lucky.
yeah.
Uh, so I would just encourage people to realize you don't need to be somebody like me that lived overseas and that had had that set of experiences. You can walk down the street and just take a time to say hello and look in the eyes and recognize the humanity of that other person.
Yeah, true. Thank you for clarifying that and saying that. It is true. It's just going to understand somebody else, not from within your comfort zone. Like,
Right,
really going out there and just connecting on just
right,
humane level, which is beautiful.
right.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
so true. And
You
just,
know, you asked me about how did I connect with people when I first started working over there. And I'll never forget this lady, Ama Hoita. And she's just this wonderful, wonderful being. And really what I discovered was nobody had ever bothered to learn these women's names.
what?
I'm not exaggerating. People did not bother to learn a woman was treated worse than a chimpanzee in the field. And and I really made a point of learning their names and their smiles because I could remember their name was just it was so humbling because it was such a little effort on my part
Yeah.
that was transformative for them. But it just goes to show it's just like even even today, if we just look somebody that is homeless or that is less fortunate in the eyes and see their humanity, that can be life-changing.
Yeah. That's so
Just
true.
recognizing the being.
Oh.
I'm getting a little preachy here. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. It is true. And I believe that we should hear this because it is just being that kind, humane person that a lot of our society is so far from right now. So
Right.
I bring it back to what's truly important at the basic level. It just always comes back down to have you even done your basics yet? Like, well, and most of us don't, right? Like, no.
Because we get so caught up in all of our doing, and we do. I mean, I know what it was like. I was a single mom and
Yeah.
and it's you get caught up in your doing. You do get caught up in your doing.
Yeah, so take a breather and just like, let's go back to yourself, right? So if
Right.
yeah, if you could leave our listeners with one powerful message, something they can take with them today, what would it be?
I would say give yourself the gift of at least 5 minutes a day to just sit and stare into space or stare at a leaf or look at a rock or just work on giving yourself 5 minutes a day of not thinking.
Mm.
Just and start practice not thinking. Because I'll tell you what, when you get good at not thinking, you're brilliant. It's just amazing what comes into your head. But it's a matter of getting yourself in a space of reflecting. And I find it the easiest when I'm walking my dog or swimming laps or something like that, or even just staring at a rock, literally. It if you can give yourself 5 minutes a day, you'll be on the road.
Oh, I'm gonna practice that. And I heard so many people say this, like, just try to like meditate. Like that's some kind of meditation where you just shut off your mind. And it's just so hard to do, I feel, because my
Hard.
mind is always like chit-chatting in there. And I'm always like,
Right.
just be quiet, be quiet. And it's
Yeah.
to be just have it be quiet and go silent.
Well, just and even if you give yourself 5 minutes and you just sit there and close your eyes and think to yourself, what does my body feel? What do I feel in my body? And if something tingles or whatever, so you're focusing your mind, but it's on something that is simple. And that practice in itself is going to get you to be much more aware of your body, which we all need to be. But my challenge is just 5 minutes a day.
Love that. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do that starting today. Like,
All right.
yeah, even tonight, if it's just, staring off into space in the darkness, I'm gonna do it.
Exactly. Just 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. I'm so excited to try. So last
Good.
but not least, where can the listeners find more about you and get your book?
Well, everything, they can connect to everything that I have just on my website, and it's loripappas.com. So I'm sure you'll put that link, LORIPAPPAS.com. And there we've got the newsletter. I write a newsletter that is with extraordinary, ordinary women. It's called Sticky Thoughts. I have a Facebook group, the Wise Women Sisterhood. Love to have you join. Um, and it's got a connect with me button. It's got all the stuff. So there's an Instagram, once again, Lori Pappas underline. Or you can usually get me with Lori Pappas or the Magic of Yes, one of the two.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here and, spending today and sharing all your knowledge and showing how such a awesome, amazing soul being that you are. So thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.